This is the story of how Netflix lost 200,000 subscribers and watched $50 billion vanish in a single day. April 20th, 2022 became the worst day in Netflix's history, and what happened next would change the entire streaming industry. Yet that number proved so shocking, so unprecedented for a company that had added subscribers every single quarter for over a decade, that it triggered a financial catastrophe affecting their entire 200 million-plus subscriber base. The trust evaporated almost overnight. To understand why 200,000 subscribers caused such chaos when they represented just a tiny fraction of Netflix's total audience, you need to know what Wall Street expected. Analysts predicted Netflix would add between 2.5 and 2.8 million new subscribers in the first quarter of 2022. But on April 19th, after the market closed, Netflix announced they'd lost 200,000 instead. That margin of error tells you everything. Wall Street expected plus 2.5 million while Netflix delivered minus 200,000, creating a swing of nearly 3 million subscribers from expectations. In sports terms, your team is favored to win by 3 touchdowns and loses by 4 instead. Analysts weren't just wrong, but catastrophically wrong about where Netflix was headed. The next morning, when the stock market opened, Netflix got absolutely demolished. The stock plummeted 35% in a single day of trading and closed at $226.19, which meant Netflix wiped out approximately $50 to $54 billion in market value in just one Wednesday. That's more than the entire value of many Fortune 500 companies, gone in 6.5 hours of trading. At that point in 2022, Netflix's stock had already dropped 62 to 68% for the year, making it the worst performing stock in the entire S&P 500. $10,000 invested in Netflix at the start of 2022 had shrunk to around $3,200 by late April. The company that survived the 2011 Quickster disaster and came back stronger, the darling of Wall Street for years, was now being treated like a sinking ship. But here's where it gets interesting, and where the real story begins, because Netflix didn't just lose subscribers randomly. There were specific, identifiable reasons, and the company's response to this crisis would completely reshape how streaming works today. Competition from Disney+, HBO Max, Apple TV+, Peacock, and Paramount Plus was eating into their market share. And the numbers don't lie. In 2019, Netflix held 48% of the streaming market, but by the first quarter of 2022, that had dropped to 45.2% globally and just 42.4% in the United States. By 2023, it would fall to around 26%. The streaming wars weren't theoretical anymore, but actively hurting Netflix's dominance. Password sharing presented another massive problem, with Netflix estimating that over 100 million households worldwide were streaming their content without paying for it. 30 million of those were right here in the US and Canada. Reed Hastings, Netflix's co-CEO at the time, put it bluntly when he said those are over 100 million households already choosing to view Netflix. They love the service, and the company just had to get paid at some degree for them. Later, he simplified it even more. We've just got to get paid. They love the service. We've just got to get paid. The Russia situation added another layer to the crisis. When Russia invaded Ukraine in March 2022, Netflix suspended service in Russia entirely, a decision that cost them 700,000 subscribers immediately. Here's the twist, though. Without those Russia losses, Netflix would have actually gained 500,000 subscribers in Q1 2022, which means the headline "Netflix loses subscribers for first time in a decade" was technically true, but the operational reality was more complex. Inflation putting pressure on household budgets, the end of pandemic lockdowns reducing stay-at-home viewing, recent price increases in the US, Canada, UK, and Ireland, and market saturation in mature markets all combined to create a perfect storm. Any one of these factors Netflix could handle, but all of them hitting at once created the crisis. The regional breakdown tells an even clearer story. The US and Canada lost 640,000 subscribers, attributed directly to price increases, while Europe, the Middle East, and Africa lost 300,000. Other regions actually saw gains, which is why the global number was only a 200,000 net loss. Netflix wasn't failing everywhere, but struggling specifically in their most mature, most expensive markets where they just raised prices while competitors were offering cheaper alternatives. And that's when Netflix did something that shocked everyone, including longtime Netflix watchers. Reed Hastings, the guy who had spent years saying Netflix would never have advertising, announced in April 2022 that they were exploring an ad-supported tier. His quote was remarkable. "As much as I'm a fan of subscription only, I'm a bigger fan of consumer choice. Allowing consumers who would like to have a lower price and are advertising tolerant get what they want makes a lot of sense." This wasn't just a small pivot, but Netflix completely abandoning one of its core philosophical positions. For context, in 2016, Hastings had called password sharing a positive thing, and now 6 years later, facing a subscriber crisis, everything was on the table. The ad-supported tier launched November 3, 2022, priced at $6.99 a month in the US. Netflix partnered with Microsoft to handle ad sales and structured it carefully with 4 to 5 minutes of ads per hour. Compare that to traditional TV's 15 to 20 minutes, and ads would be 15 to 30 seconds long. You'd get 720p HD video quality, but no offline downloads, and about 5 to 10% of content would be unavailable due to licensing restrictions. Wall Street was skeptical about whether this would cannibalize their premium subscriptions and whether Netflix users, who'd grown accustomed to ad-free viewing, would revolt. The critics were loud. But here's what actually happened. As of November 2024, the ad-supported tier had 70 million global monthly users, and by November 2025, that number hit 190 million monthly active viewers. In the United States specifically, 45% of Netflix households were watching the ad-supported tier by 2025, and when you looked at new signups in markets where the ad tier was available, 40% were choosing that option as of January 2024. The ad tier didn't cannibalize premium subscriptions, but expanded the total addressable market instead. People who couldn't afford or didn't want to pay $15.49 for standard Netflix now had an option at $6.99, and Netflix nearly sold out their ad inventory at launch. This wasn't a desperate move that failed, but a strategic pivot that printed money. The password-sharing crackdown represented the other half of Netflix's response, and this one was way more controversial. Netflix started testing in March 2022 in Chile, Peru, and Costa Rica, then expanded to Argentina, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and the Dominican Republic in August 2022. On May 23, 2023, they rolled it out in the United States, followed by a global rollout throughout 2023. The policy was straightforward but strict, limiting your Netflix account to one household defined by the same Wi-Fi network or IP address. Adding someone outside your household cost an extra $7.99 per month in the US, that's $7.99 Canadian in Canada, and £4.99 in the UK. And you had to watch on your home Wi-Fi at least once every 31 days, or the system would flag you. Netflix used IP addresses, device IDs, and account activity to detect sharing. They did offer a profile transfer feature, so if you'd been using your ex's Netflix or your parents' account, you could move your profile with your watch history, your recommendations, your list to a new paid account. But make no mistake, the free ride was over. The reaction was intense, with social media exploding in anger and people feeling betrayed. For years, Netflix had tacitly encouraged sharing, and now they were cracking down hard. Critics predicted mass cancellations and said Netflix was alienating their most loyal users, while the bears on Wall Street said this would backfire spectacularly. Except it didn't backfire at all. By October 2023, Netflix had added 9 million new subscribers since the crackdown started, and from May 2023 to June 2024, they added approximately 6 million more subscribers. Password sharing in the US decreased from 12% of users to 10%, which meant people complained loudly on Twitter and then quietly pulled out their credit cards and paid up. Greg Peters, who was COO at the time and would later become co-CEO, had predicted this when he said it'll take a while to work this out and get that balance right. And his belief was that they would go through a year or so of iterating and then deploying that. He was right about the iteration, the complaining, and ultimately the success. Meanwhile, Netflix made other moves, committing to spend $18 billion on content in 2022. In July 2022, right after announcing they'd lost another 970,000 subscribers in Q2, though this was actually better than their projection of losing 2 million, they released The Gray Man, their most expensive movie ever at over $200 million. But they also started shifting strategy from more content to better content. And in 2023, Netflix produced 130 fewer titles than in 2022, a 16% decrease. They were moving toward what insiders called bigger, better, fewer, investing in surefire hits and prestigious projects rather than flooding the platform with mediocre content. So, what happened next? In Q3 2022, just months after the catastrophic Q1 announcement, Netflix started adding subscribers again. And by Q4 2023, they posted a record quarter with 13.1 million subscriber additions, their biggest gain since the pandemic. In Q1 2024, they added another 9.33 million subscribers. For the full year 2023, Netflix added approximately 30 million subscribers, and in 2024, they added 41.32 million subscribers, a 15.9% year-over-year growth rate that was their highest since 2020. By Q3 2024, they had 282.7 million subscribers, and latest reports from late 2024 put them over 300 million subscribers. Their revenue in 2023 was $31.6 billion, up 6% year over year, and in 2024, revenue continued growing with strong profitability. The stock that had collapsed 35% in a single day in April 2022 was up 82% in 2024. What Netflix proved is that sometimes the right move is the unpopular move. Wall Street analysts, internet critics, and conventional wisdom all said ads and password crackdowns would fail. But Netflix did them anyway, and 2 years later, they had more subscribers, more revenue, and more profit than ever. The streaming wars aren't over, with competition from Disney, Warner Bros. Discovery, Apple, Amazon, and others remaining fierce. But Netflix went through the fire in 2022 and came out forged stronger, losing 200,000 subscribers and gaining a blueprint for sustainable streaming profitability. That's how you turn a crisis into a comeback. How Netflix lost subscribers' trust and then systematically earned it back. Not with apologies, but with results.